Peace, family. I wanted to get on here real quick and talk to you about a live video that Roland Martin did a few days ago, uh, criticizing, or maybe it was a week ago. He was criticizing the reparations rally that they had down there in Washington, and I believe it was led by Tariq Nasheed and a bunch of other people were there, including Dr. Boyce Watkins, who historically hasn't always agreed with Tariq on certain issues, but I bring that up because I think that's quite relevant to this conversation. Now, in Roland Martin's video, he was, as usual, very condescending and disrespectful. He referred to the reparations rally as this little thing, he got a little rally, and he's very dismissive of it and saying y'all ain't gonna get nothing. It almost felt like a white supremacist, like like kind of jeering at us. It felt like a white supremacist, like making fun of black people seeking reparative justice in this country. And while I understand that Roland Martin, everything that he does is through the lens of the Democratic Party, even more so than blackness, I think that it's getting out of hand where people like Roland and a few others in media spaces find it so appropriate and necessary to disrespect the black community, disrespect other black people publicly, and often in defense of a system that does nothing for the collective of black people. Now, Roland gave his little arguments about why reparations ain't gonna happen because you need to put them Democrats in there and the Republicans will never give it to you and blah blah blah. But Democrats have all they've had all the power in all branches of government, and nothing has happened. Democrats have called the issue of reparations divisive. Rep- they didn't even pass, what was it, HR 40, which is nothing more than a study. Like, why is it that people like Roland Martin are so attached to the teat of the Democratic Party, even when it's glaringly obvious to intelligent black people that they are doing this with disingenuous intentions? Because Roland Martin is smart enough to understand. I mean, he's no idiot. He's no idiot. He's smart enough to understand that the things that he's engaging in are not working for the black community in this country. So why not try something different? Well, that's likely because Roland wants to preserve his positioning and 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 possibly get his positioning back, into the so-called mainstream media space, into the corporate media space. That's where all the money is. That's where all the connections and the influence is. And it's just really sad that people like him contribute to the constant disarray and conflict that's always on display as it pertains to black people in public spaces. I don't agree with Tariq Nasheed on a lot of shit. You know what I'm saying? And whenever he's out of pocket, I have no problem calling that out. But there's a difference between calling out someone for for their indiscretions or making mistakes or just not getting things right and completely disrespecting them and all the people who respect them. Like, that's crazy. Like, if I'm gonna criticize Roland Martin, I'm gonna criticize Roland Martin. I'm not gonna criticize or disrespect and condescend towards the people who may agree with him on certain issues. I'm not gonna say Roland Martin's audience is stupid. But that's the type of behavior that you see from Roland Martin, where he actually brings his little cronies onto his show to do nothing but uh, kowtow to his point of view, serve as yes men to his ignorance, even to the point where sometimes you can see that they're cringing. Like these people, they're like, damn, like this guy's going a little bit too far. But no one checks him. And that's the problem. We don't have enough people to check us when we are out of pocket, especially as it pertains to uh, behavior and or rhetoric that that negatively impacts our community. You have to remember, whether we like these people or not, and I think we place too much stock in them anyway. When you're a black person in media in this country, unfortunately, you carry with yourself a great deal of responsibility. And the way this country is set up, it's very deliberate that any black person that speaks on any of these networks and any of these channels, they're somehow touted as the voice of black people when you don't see that for any other group in media spaces. So we have an unfair burden of responsibility because collectively we know we live in an anti-black system that specifically targets our community, which requires that we learn how to work collectively in order to further advance that our community and our own political agenda. But when you have so many boule, fake woke liberal, white liberal controlled black faces in these spaces that are just spewing the same old nonsensical rhetoric to our own people, it becomes very difficult, man. It becomes very difficult and discouraging to people who truly care about our community. Now, I was talking to someone recently and they said, no matter what it is, I'm never going to call out a black person publicly. We can do that behind closed doors. And I understand the sentiment behind that. But at the same time, when you have black people who are engaging in the most irresponsible behavior under the guise of representation of the collective, they must be called out and they must be held accountable. And when it's people like Roland Martin and and man, let me not get specific and call certain people out because Roland, I think he's very deserving of that right now. But I don't want to get into labeling people, like saying names and then all of a sudden people get offended and you tune out. And that's another problem I have with us as a community, this emotionalism that we engage in where we cannot, unfortunately, a lot of us are unwilling to receive, a message unless it is catered and tailor made to the way that we want to receive it. And even then, if it doesn't align with our personal point of view or the view that has been fed to us, we just totally tune out and we shut down. We have to stop allowing ourselves to be manipulated emotionally because that is the driving force of how we are treated in this country, especially as it pertains to our politics. We are viewed as political children. We are viewed as people that must be told what to do or else. Hence, the behavior and the rhetoric that you often see from people like Roland Martin. Roland Martin has had several opportunities to engage with people from the black community who may be more labeled more so as quote unquote radical or race baiters or whatever you want to call it. But as a part of our community, Roland Martin has a responsibility to engage all of those voices with impartiality and fairness. That does not happen. Roland Martin has set up his platform as a platform to elevate his ego, to feed his ego. And it's very obvious. And it's actually quite pathetic because I think Roland Martin is a very educated person. But there are a lot of educated idiots out here. And I think Roland Martin quite often serves as that sort of example. So I'm just saying that as Black people in positions of influence and notoriety, we have a responsibility to the collective. And I know it becomes very enticing sometimes when we see that check or when we see that uh, that possible access, that proximity to the access into this system, that will, benefit us financially. But at the end of the day, people always say money changes people. I don't think that's true. I think money reveals character. I think money, or even the aspiration for that success, and it reveals your true character. So when you see these people in these social justice and or white approved black media spaces who tend to attack their own community when their community does nothing more than demand justice and accountability, i.e., uh, give us something in return for our votes, we have to question those people and we have to hold them to account. And if that means we need to tune them out and no longer give them, our attention and the support that they are thriving upon, then so be it. We need a wider variety of perspectives to be presented to the masses as it pertains to our community. And we have to stop relying upon these very narrow uh, presentations of blackness to represent the collective. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Oh, and one more thing regarding the reparations rally, right? Now, some people may agree with it. Some people may say, oh, it ain't never going to happen. You got to vote. Voting is more important than reparations rallies and calling them out for that. But why can't both be important? Why can't we walk and chew gum at the same time? Why can't this person do this over here and then that person handles that over there? I saw Roland do the exact same thing with that young man, King Randall. Remember King Randall III with the school, the Expo Boys down there in Georgia? Is it Georgia or is it South Carolina? But he has a school down south. I think it's in Georgia. But we saw how Roland brought that young man onto his show and basically like he tried to like sabotage him. It's like he tried to what's the word? It was like a sneak attack on him. He brought him on under the premise of talking about his school and all of the positive things that he was doing for the young black men in the community. And then he just took the whole thing and just switched it up into condemning the young man and chastising him for not prioritizing voting in his agenda. And that young man, King, he said, listen, that's not my priority in my fight. My priority is saving black boys before they die. I think that's a pretty good priority. So if that's his job, if that's his field of expertise, then you let them work over there. Why can't we work in several areas, but work as a collective towards the same goal? This is the problem I have. And this is why I don't trust people like Roland Martin, because he is always presenting the arguments and framing them in a way that says the only way that black people, the only road to salvation for black people in the United States is through the Democratic Party. That's a whole crock of shit. And when you listen to that type of nonsense, that should tell you who he is and who people like that are. So when you see black people who are always engaging in this Democrat versus Republican conversation, as opposed to African people in America versus this white supremacist system, then you know you are not dealing with someone who has the best interest of our community at heart. So that's what it is. Those people, they probably prioritize their own personal gain more than the collective, which is why we need people who, and that's the thing, I used to say, like, well, what type of people can we get in these positions that can't be tainted? And you know what? it's people with integrity and conviction. Because I used to say, well, maybe if they already have money and they're already rich, then they can't be they can't be swayed in any way. But no, because they're just going to want more money. That's just what it is, you know. So, and then unfortunately, when you have people who are not used to having anything, or have not really had access and have always had a desire for success, money, fame, whatever, once they get in the door, they get drunk on that. And then they start to lose touch with where they came from. You got people like AOC, you know, she immediately forgot where the hell she came from, because she totally like did a 180 on everything that she promised she would do when she got into Congress. So who are the people that we can rely upon to do what they're supposed to do in this fight? And that's why I always say that change, there's a saying that change takes place from the bottom up, right? Now, I do agree with that, but I think we should also add to that statement, real change takes place from the outside in. A broken machine cannot repair itself. It is going to take an outside force to come in and repair and or destroy it and rebuild it. So, yeah, that's what I got to say. Let's stop relying on these Negro whisperers who have been put into position to keep the Black community under control, because they are pretty much controlled opposition. It gives the illusion of them fighting for us, but when they're really fighting for themselves and for more access. So anyway, that's all I had to say, y'all. Peace out. I love y'all. Talk to y'all later.